What is up, people? It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from UK rock trio Black Orchid Empire. The band's new album, Tempus Veritas, will be released on April 14th via Season of Mist. So, album number 4 from Black Orchid Empire, and their first on Season of Mist. The album follows up their 2020 release, Semaphore. Interwoven with the fabric of our history as a species and countless opportunities for stories, little pieces of imagined narrative set within events we all collectively know as historical that seek to explore what it means to be human. This is the idea behind Tempus Veritas. Whereas Semaphore looked into the future, this record reinvents the past, wondering what it was like to be inside the mind of a person living through times of consequence. The album was recorded at the Recording Studio in London, produced by the band, then mixed by the vocalist-guitarist Paul Visser, and then mastered by Ermin Hamidovich at Systematic Production.
Nailed it.
Fuck that up.
Nailed it.
So,
his name now. He will be known as this from now on.
Set in stone. I'd heard of these guys before. I'd listened to Semaphore back in 2020. So this one I was kind of interested to hear just to see where they go with this new one. What about yourself? Had you heard of the band? Heard the last album? Any of
I heard the single that we played on the podcast.
All right.
So that was it. That was as far as I got. So you gave us a description, and then I was like, cool. And I listened to the track when I was editing, and I was like, cool.
Excellent. What did you think of the album? Do you think it was cool?
Yeah, there's a lot to like here. There is a lot to like here. I know that's one of Duncan's go-to phrases, but
a lot to like here.
There genuinely is. I think the first thing to mention off the bat is the vocals. Vocalist has an incredible range, infectious melodies, really, really good at crafting a melody, and he understands, in a lot of ways, where like it reminded me a lot of when we were reviewing that Circles EP.
Yeah.
And there is a art to when the single comes out, you raise you go up in the chorus, you you move everything up. It's that kind of transition to let's have soaring melodies and a hook that you can grab. And Black Orchid Empire have that for days. There's every single track they know, right, we're just going to lift the track up now and here you get it. But that's not to diminish the fact that the verses are very well written as well and also very catchy. So from that part, I think they've got something special going on there. Would never have guessed UK. So once again, Duncan's knowledge of things is fucking out the window. Second thing, got like a little bendy jumpy guitar. Once again, kind of reminded me a little bit of they're kind of the more alternative Circles in a lot of respects. They understand, they have those progressive moments where they can lead you through things, and the guitar work can get there. Almost every single song though starts off with like a bow da da down da down. You're like you just want to fucking headbang. You're just smiling, having a great time. The other thing about it is they're an immensely positive sounding band.
Yeah.
Like every single song here is very uplifting and very, very happy. It's a cheerful sounding album, and it's not long. This is 11 tracks. It's under 40 minutes in length. Out with the opening song, which is kind of quasi-introduction. Everything else is a track, but they're all single length, and that's smart. It allows them to do the progressive stuff that they do in the guitar work, but also play to pop sensibility. Once again, looking at Circles, they just kept reminding me of that. It just kept taking me. They're on a different level of heavy. But I kept thinking about this is really, really smart, because what you're doing is you're taking elements that sit out with necessarily the confines of what would be a defined pop structure, but you're putting it in a pop structure, which makes it very accessible, whilst at the same time musically being quite challenging. We've already listened to arguably one of the best progressive albums we're going to hear this year in Haken's new album Fauna, which is fucking mind-blowing. But there are elements here that are very reminiscent of that, and I kind of like that when listening to it. I kept coming back to pair really, really well with Fauna. But if you're in the right mood and you just fancy something very kind of, dare I say, springy and summery, it has those vibes ripping out it, which I think is worth it as well. I think the production's really well handled here. Like everything is nice and audible. I think the vocals at times are a bit loud in the mix compared to some of what else is going on, but he's a great singer, so I would be maybe a bit more critical if the vocals weren't great. But the way it sits is very distinct and very clear from the rest of the band.
Yeah.
So just a listening observation to my ears. My only gripe, if I can call it a gripe, is that the album, for all those twists and turns, does get a little predictable, like about the midway mark. You kind of feel like, not predictable in that I know exactly how the next song's going to sound, or I know exactly how the guitars, the riff's the lick's going to work or whatever, but they do follow a formula, and that formula becomes a bit repetitive. It's his biggest asset, and at times its biggest hindrance. The asset is, like I say, it manages to condense into tracks which other bands would maybe take 6 or 7 minutes to explore, a nice concise bite-sized 3.5 minute listen, and you get what you need at it without any of the lavish extravagance or opulence of what some other maybe progressive bands tend to do. That being said, by the time you get to a track like Summit, for example, or Weakness, I know the formula. I know how it kind of works.
Yeah.
So I know I'm going to get the big bouncy jumpy riff in the middle. I know I'm going to get the breakout guitar bit, which is all kind of picky, and it's all like individual notes and less chords. And the verse, he's going to do his soaring vocals over the top of it. Chorus is going to kick in. It's going to sound fucking huge, and inevitably we're going to end up on that bouncy riff by the end. And that's the formula, and they do it really, really well. It kind of made me think that actually, and I'm not one for doing this often, an EP might have been a better length for this one, in that it may have hidden some of the expectations that you will have by the midway point. Yeah. That being said, it's a
EPs. That being said,
what?
Fuck EPs. That being said,
well, I was about to say Dave doesn't like EPs, so he'd be happy it was an album.
Yeah.
To be honest, we've heard some EPs that are longer than this year. So they have a, it's difficult to hate on them. They have a really nice kind of, like I say, cheery, happy sound, and a very rich, colourful texture about them that when you listen to it, you kind of just feel good. Like every time I listened to it, I just felt good about myself by the end of it. So they're onto something. I don't know if they could afford to be a bit more experimental and push the boat out a bit more, or maybe even lean into, as much as I love the vocals, maybe some more instrumentation there, maybe some more instrumental tracks to break things out a little bit more, longer sections play into that. But that's about it. Like, it's not an album I could hate on, but it's not an album I can love either. You were smiling a lot through this. I've either stole things right from your notebook,
Duncan,
or...
I feel like sometimes you're just living in my head. I don't know if
we've been together too long.
We spent too much time together, man.
Well, that's the thing. We've been together too. We've listened to the same albums from the same bands for so many years that unfortunately we've become brundle-flied.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of the same opinions I did.
Yeah, I did. Well, firstly, the positive stuff. I am so impressed that this is a trio. Like, this is three guys. That just fucking blows my mind. The sound and the depth they have to these songs on this album is remarkable for a three-piece. The sound has always been huge. It was huge in the last album as well, but here from the first track, there's a weight to these tracks that feels even bigger than before. So, like, firstly, hats off to the band and Paul on the production of the album, because it sounds really good. It sounds really dynamic, full of punch. In particular, I really liked the kind of girth of the guitar tone on this one. I think it really gives those kind of the heavier groove-laden parts more impact than they ever have before. Stylistically, I think this sits within a an alternative realm. I think it goes between both alternative rock and metal. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. It's got the melody and the hooks, but it's also got the heaviness to satisfy that want for something a bit more kind of ballsy. Also got that prog side in there as well, though, which is really cool to hear. But then you've also got the extension of that into a bit of Djent as well. And that makes for a really interesting mix of styles and influences. I could definitely hear bits of Biffy in here on the alternative side. Also reminded me of a UK band from way back in the day called Empire that I really liked. I can't remember them. We went to see them live, but clearly had no impact.
Was that with Job for a Cowboy by any chance? Like, I literally, there's a whole section of, we must have went, there's a black hole of like about 2 years worth of gigs where I can't remember anything, and I would love to say it was substance abuse, but it wasn't.
They were like way back in the day. We went to check them out, but I could definitely hear a bit of that on the alternative side. On the proggier side, definite elements of Haken, bits of Tool in there as well. And then, as you said, I could definitely hear the Circles thing, a little bit of Tesseract maybe as well, and the kind of like the gentler parts. But it didn't ever feel like it was too much of an influence that it became like a sound-alike. I felt like Black Orchid Empire still put across their personality on this album. I think this album, comparing it to the last one, I think this feels like a more refined version of Black Orchid Empire than we've heard before. As much as I enjoyed Semaphore, I think the songs on this album have a better like thematic connection to each other. I think the album flows really well. But I do think they also have some quite interesting mechanics throughout the songs as well. There were definitely more parts on this album that kind of stopped me and thought, I'd like to go back and re-listen to that, both musically and vocally. And I'll come back to the vocals, but musically, I really liked how kind of slick this felt. Every track just kind of unfolded really kind of thoughtfully. There's always a kind of pulse behind everything where you're just kind of nodding along. And they transition really effortlessly into those big choruses, or even something heavier with a lot of ease. It sounds very I hate using this word, but it sounds more mature. It feels like a more mature version of Black Orchid Empire.
Mark it off on your Metal Epidemic bingo card. Did the album take you on a journey, Dave? Was it full of light and shade?
I'm not going to say those words. It sounded it sounded leaner. I thought the songwriting sounded leaner. The songs felt a bit more to the point. The hooks were a bit bigger, and the band probably sound the most connected that I've ever heard them. Tracks like Summit, where they really lean into that almost kind of like Tool-esque kind of progressive side, sound incredibly tight. But they've also kept that alternative side, and they can switch to at any point. So the songs never become like too proggy. You know, it's not like a proggy bukkake party, you know what I mean? It's not like that. It has I don't know, has a bit of balance to it.
What sex parties are you been going to? And how do I get invited?
It's not jizz, it's riffs that they're hitting you with. Those types of parties. I felt like there were more. Don't know how I got there. They're more. I
don't know. It's not usually me. It's usually me that hits out with semen. I'm glad to see that.
Spending too much time with you, as we've said. A lot more kind of breathable moments where you can kind of sit back and not really have to overthink, you know, the time signature or the bass drum patterns. I think the almost kind of shorter songs help with that as well. There's only one track here that goes over 4 minutes, and I felt like that kind of leaner song length helped get the point across of the track, you know, deliver the hook and not overstay its welcome. They've never really been guilty of that, to be honest, in the past. Like their previous album was over, like the last album I think only had a few tracks over 4 minutes, so it's not something they really do. But this album is only a few minutes shorter than Semaphore, but I feel like it was a really good length overall. It's not overblown at all, which, you know, some bands who are in that kind of prog realm do tend to do. You know, their albums can get quite long. Vocally, I felt like this is where this album was a home run. I think the vocals were never lacking before, but I think Paul has a really, really good voice. I definitely felt the hooks were more profound on this one, had more of a kind of lasting effect after the album was done. And I could feel like the emotion and the intensity from the big like soaring vocals on like Scarlet Haze, or like even the kind of screams on like hydrogen as well. Hydrogen.
Hydrogen.
Hydrogen. I felt like his I think you said this before, but I think his range is incredible.
He can just, and he switches up.
Yeah.
Apparently with relative ease, Dave.
Absolutely. But props to Paul, the bassist who does backing vocals. He's got a cracking range as well. So between the two of them, it's really good. I think Dave's got a really kind of soulful voice in that kind of mid-range, but then he complements it really well by reaching into the kind of into lower tones and scattering in some nice moments in the higher register as well. And same with Dave Ferguson, the bassist. I think his harmonies are really on point. Even some of them are quite subtle, but you can still feel the effects of them. A couple of things that I found, a couple of wee criticisms from me. I feel like the order of the tracks kind of bothered me a little bit. I feel like the album settles down a little bit too quickly. I feel like you come off of Hydrogen, which is really ballsy, really groovy, and then the Raven comes in, and I don't know, it just felt too early for something so clean, and it's quite a kind of almost, I don't want to say saccharine, but it's got quite a kind of sweetness to it. I think I'd have maybe held back on that for a few more tracks. The track after Last Ronin as well, it comes in fairly clean and melodic as well. So I felt like the album really got going with Hydrogen, and then it kind of settled back, took the foot off the pedal a little bit. I think I would have kept that momentum going for a bit longer, because if you look at the end of the album, all the heavier stuff's at the end. You've got from Summit to Latimer, like the last 4 tracks are all far more riffy and groove laden. So I felt like maybe some of those tracks would have been better at the start of the album, mixed in a bit better. The other thing I would say is, and something you've kind of touched on, I don't really feel like they took any massive risks on this. There wasn't anything here that I wasn't expecting. It kind of did start to follow an expected path as I went through it. But I suppose on the flip side to that, they're serving up exactly what the fans want from the band. So I totally get that as well. That aside, I did find this an enjoyable listen. I think it's hooky, it's well written, it's got a bit of emotion in there, but it's also got enough heavy and progressive moments that even if you're not the biggest fan of like alternative rock, then those other elements might pull you in to kind of check this out. I actually, when I was on YouTube looking at other stuff, I found there's a live video from, I think it was recorded live at the Dome in London, and like they can recreate this live perfectly. Like the live sound is unbelievable. As a trio, just kind of highlighting again, it sounds incredibly good. Like the riffs, that sounds huge. All the vocals are spot on. The harmonies are absolutely perfect. So like hearing this on CD, like if you go and see it live, it will sound just as good as the CD. Very impressive live band. Scoring. Where would you score Tempus Veritas?
I'm going to come in 3.5.
Yep.
Like I say, I enjoy it. It's catchy. It's one of those ones where I know I will come back to. I don't know how often I'll do it, but it's a home run in that it's a feel-good album I can shove on in the background. I can do things while this plays on in the background quite comfortably. I think it's a dangerous balancing act, because like you said, they have a fan base that expects a particular side of them, whereas my personal taste would push them a bit more daring and exploring a bit more space. Ultimately, if you have a fan base that are invested in what you're doing and that's your sound, then why risk things? And it's not for lack of talent. It's there. No. They could clearly do it. They've just decided that's the formula that they want to work to. And to me, it ticks a lot of boxes. It just doesn't work over an entire album for me. It works more in a shorter form. Like I mentioned Circles about 3 times already. I don't know how a long form version of what we got in that EP would work for me. I might come across the same feeling of that one, where it encapsulated 5-6 songs was the perfect length for me, because I felt like I got everything I needed from it. That if I had another 5 or 6 songs that were in a similar vein, does it just become a bit too repetitive like it was here? So I don't know. I think I think it's like they should be immensely proud of what they've done. They have a great sound. It's maybe just not everything that I would have wanted, which is once again a personal choice. 3.5.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a 3.5 from me as well. It's not breaking new ground. This still sounds very much like Black Orchid Empire, but I do feel like this is one of their most accomplished albums they've sounded. I think you can hear on each release their songwriting does take another step forward, and I think like if they are touring this album in the vicinity, then I will definitely go and see them live on this album cycle. If they're coming up to Scotland, for sure I would definitely check them out, because I seen that live video online definitely kind of piqued my interest to see that kind of live show. But yeah, 3.5 from me. Yeah, still an enjoyable listen. Had a couple of little issues, but nothing major. But yeah, check it out. Let us know what you think. That is our review of Black Orchid Empire, Tempus Veritas. It's out on April 14th on Season of Mist. Links below to the band and to the Bandcamp, so you can have a listen to the singles and stuff. And as I said, let us know what you think of the album. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.